back in March and April. But this CalMIP activity was started in early 2025. It is a joint initiative of the AIMS Land Data Assimilation Working Group that organizes these meetings, and also the International Land Modeling Forum Parameter Estimation Working Group. So it's going to be focused on evaluating, or in a first phase at least, how well land surface models who are doing parameter estimation, parameter calibration, how well their in-house, if you like, all the different types of approaches they're using reduces both the model data misfit across the models, but also the spread across models for key variables. The idea in this first phase is that we're just going to leverage what we have, see what we have, and not explore too much the specifics of how we do parameter calibration in these models. Just see, with what we have and with what we're doing currently, how much does that impact the spread across models, and how much are we able to reduce that model uncertainty? There have been a couple of model intercomparisons, maybe not called MIPs in the past, specifically for parameter calibration, but they weren't quite always at the scale, using the scale of these land surface models. And they were a while ago now, so it's a good chance to do an update. But we do have a bigger vision for CalMIP that extends beyond this first phase. And the goal would be that, we use this, we build a community, and we use these sort of joint experiments to start testing, what are the best approaches for parameter calibration, to do a more rigorous global scale calibration and see how global scale and future simulations are affected by the parameter estimation. And eventually, this is multiple phases I'm sort of explaining here, but eventually have the CalMIP be part of something like the global carbon budget each year, or things like a integrated MIP of CMIP, potentially in CMIP 8. That's how far ahead we're looking. So next slide, please, Hannah. So the motivation for this is just, as everyone is probably very aware, there's a large spread across land surface models, both in current and future projections. The plots shown here of the land atmosphere carbon flux, but it would be the same, if we were looking at carbon stocks or water fluxes or water storage or energy budgets and things like that. And we currently, there's some parameter calibration going on for these land surface models, but largely it's sort of being done offline, and the calibrated parameters are not being included in global scale simulations. So as I mentioned, we've never really done a comparison to know how much that work is impacting things like model spread. We'd like to, answer this question both at site scale and at global scale, looking at different optimized variables. I'm not going to go into the details of what we've decided on for the first phase here. It would take too long, but suffice to say that, the first phase is really like a baby step, okay? So in future phases, we'll get more into that, we're looking at different types of variables. How does that impact our model projections and things like that? Next slide, please. So to start this, we formed a CalMIP steering committee or planning committee. It's everyone you see here. I think it goes in order from left to right. So these folks came together in early 2025, I think, and we organized an initial planning and development workshop that Jana mentioned back. There were 3 different times in March and April this year where we put forward our plan for the first phase, deciding on very specific details like which variables, how many sites, whether to do site and global scale simulations, things like that. So there was a lot, it was great participation, a lot of feedback. a lot of different views at times. So we've tried to absorb all of that and make some decisions in the intervening months about what we're going to do. And yeah, but we really appreciate everyone's feedback on that. And it was hugely useful for laying out the scope of this first phase. We also had a discussion session on what future phases could look like. And that was also hugely helpful in terms of thinking, well, gauging, I guess, community interest as well as thinking ahead to next steps. Next slide, please. Yeah. So the activities over the past 6 months, it's gone quiet. I realize if you haven't heard anything from us, but we have been actively working away. Samantha Hopkins is working with me in my lab, and she's done a huge effort to search through a bunch of FluxNet sites to select sites that we had a site selection criteria, good number of years, containing uncertainties, things like that. We're following the Plumber 2 files. For those of you not familiar with Plumber 2, it was another model intercomparison project led by Gab Abramovich, more focused on hydrology and energy than all variables. But that is we're using those sites because those files are set up well. Gab has done a lot of evaluation of different sites and has been very helpful in helping us out with how those sites were selected and things like that. And also the other reason for that is that a lot of modeling groups already have those files set up to run. And so Sam did a whole bunch of analyses because, our criteria for CalMIP are slightly different than what they needed for Plumber 2. And so from that analysis, we've currently selected 22 sites that fit our criteria. And we've also been working on how we can run the exercise, the first phase, through Gab's modelevaluation.org website, which is a place where you can upload your model simulations and download the data and things like that. We've also hired a postdoctoral fellow, Raj, to work on the CalMIP, to lead the CalMIP first phase. So Raj Deepak here is just joined Western as a Western University postdoc fellow. So we're very excited about that. Raj will be taking over a lot of the sort of interfacing with the community, disseminating the protocol and the input data and analyzing the model outputs, experiment outputs as they come in. So welcome to those two members of the group, especially to Raj, who will be leading things as we move forward. Next slide, please. Yeah, so next steps, we just need to finalize the draft protocol. And we are creating a website for CalMIP. We'll upload the protocol to the website. Once that's done, we will send around a participant survey to see who is definitely interested in participating and gather some information. We're hoping to launch this first phase in mid-November, starting with a community webinar where we will explain a lot of the details in much more detail, explain the protocol and the steps. The date for that will be coming soon, but in the middle 2 weeks of November. The participant survey, we'd like to have everyone's responses and know who's going to participate by the end of November. And then the plan currently is that we just do a test calibration on one site in Europe, which we'd ask everyone, all participating groups, to do by the end of January, if that works. If the community says that's too short a time period, then we can extend that. But that's currently the plan. The idea being that we just test out the whole framework and iron out some issues that there will no doubt be. And then move forward with including all the rest of the sites. A slight caveat on that, though. Our site selection protocol selected 22 sites based mostly on record length and the availability of uncertainties that we need for calibration. But we have learned recently that FluxNet 2025, so an update on the last community release, FluxNet 2015, will be released by the end of this year, and Gab Abramovich is working on processing those files so that they can be used with land surface models. with a 10-year extension to this data set, we expect to be able to include many more sites and have a better representation across the globe and different plant functional types. So our plan is, although we've selected these 22 sites, to explore over the coming months the FluxNet 2025 and to add to those list of sites that we already have a greater number of sites by the time that we get past this first test calibration. And so that's a bit of an ongoing, a thing in progress that we need to sort through, but we aim to have that done by the time that first test calibration is done, and we'd have another participant webinar explaining our decision moving forward in sort of February 2026. And finally, the last thing is that, we want to write a paper or two explaining CalMIP and the CalMIP first phase before we even get to any results, including all members of the community that have participated so far in the workshops, and provided feedback on the draft protocol and things like that. So watch out for that.